Hey everybody, I just got done recording episode 7, and I just want to let you guys know I've got all the lights turned off. I literally just finished, turned everything off, and realized that I'm going to let you guys know now this is a heavier episode. There is some talk about some childhood trauma, some things that happened with me. There is talk about child abuse. So I just wanted to give you guys a warning of that. If that's something that's hugely triggering to you, I would say maybe skip this episode. I love you guys. Let's get into the episode. All right, welcome back, everybody. Oh my goodness, oh my gosh, episode 7. Hanging with Jay, y'all. We've been hanging out for 7 weeks now. Wow, that is insane to me. Oh my gosh, 7 weeks. Okay, I'm gonna keep tripping on this pretty much every week that I put a new episode out. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Today, man, I gotta tell you, like, I feel like my beard is looking good. I'm wearing one of my favorite headbands. I got my little one of my friends called this a samurai bun. I'll take it, baby. Oh man, I love it. Okay, man, if I hope your week is going great thus far. If it is, thanks for coming and hanging out. If it's not, thanks for coming and hanging out. I hope that we can have a great hangout session, and I hope that we can talk about some things today. Let's get into some housekeeping real quick. That's just talking about the week. So this week has been really awesome because I have spent a lot of time driving, and as some of you may know, I have an hour commute each way to go to work. And I'll tell you what, an hour to work, it can get daunting. It can be overwhelming at times. However, it's one of those things that I enjoy doing because it gives me a lot of time to decompress before getting to work and getting myself prepared, or well, I guess decompress is like after. So getting myself prepared to get to work, and I get to think about a lot of things, and I get to bring a lot of things forward, and then it gives me time to decompress after work and really leave all my stuff at work. So I love being able to do that. And this week, for whatever reason, I've enjoyed every trip. There's been a lot of gratefulness and happiness about my drive to and from work. I've spent a lot of time doing some carpool karaoke. It's been fantastic. And I've spent a lot of time just in thoughts, in my thoughts, and in thinking a lot about this podcast, thinking about each one of you, thinking about how I can best serve each one of you, and how I can serve myself the best as well, because that's inevitably what I'm doing here. I use this podcast as an outlet for myself, a creative outlet for myself to really work through some things at times. And I think that that's kind of what it's always been before. When I was doing my live streams, I would stream every day. Not every day. I would stream a lot on Facebook Live, and that was always a lot of fun. I really loved doing that, and it was a really good outlet for me to get a lot of the things out that I was kind of going through, and even give myself the kind of that social place. Like that's where I got a lot of my social interaction. Is that the best? Probably not, but it was still something for me because I couldn't go out and just like hang out with people because either work or they were busy or whatever it was. That was part of what happened. So that's really all that's been going on this week. I'm not super excited because my youngest daughter has surgery. I'm actually recording this right before I have to go pick her up, and then we're headed out of town to the hospital where she's going to have the surgery at, but she doesn't have it until tomorrow morning. So then what we're doing is we're getting a hotel tonight, and then tomorrow morning at like 6:30 a.m., which I'm sorry, to me, 6:30 a.m. doesn't exist unless I'm still up from the night before. I mean, not really, but that's a super exaggeration. But so I definitely am dealing with some anxiety about that. I know that all she's really getting done is she's getting her adenoids and tonsils removed tomorrow. And any time that any one of my kids has to go into any kind of a surgery, it doesn't matter how minor it is, I deal with anxiety every time. So I have to deal with so I'll be going to do that right after I'm finished recording this. And I definitely am dealing with some anxiety about it. I'm dealing with some fear over it. Is it justified fear? Probably not necessarily. But at the same time, I think that there's a healthy level of fear anytime that one of your children or a loved one has to go into something like that, because anything could happen. I'm not going to think too much into it because I feel like that's only going to raise my anxiety levels, which I'd rather not happen. So that's going to be happening. And other than that, it hasn't been a super busy week. I do plan on having some busier weeks coming up, some things happening, some things planned out a little bit more. I actually have a trip that I'm planning on doing very soon, and what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to pre-record a few episodes, that way that while I'm out and on that trip, I can actually like have stuff go out and have episodes go out, so I'm not missing anything. I'll talk more about the trip and kind of more what I'm planning once I get there, and I might even show you guys some clips after the fact, however it works out. We'll see. Because I don't even know how long that trip is going to be is part of the problem. But it is winter time too, so there's not a lot going on. And I usually don't go out and do stuff during the winter just because, like today, the wind in my area is gusting 40 miles an hour. No thanks. I would rather not, especially because it's like cold wind. And I know like this is, and I will, like, little disclaimer, this is California. So I get that there are other parts of the country that like you are looking at much colder windshield temperatures. I totally understand that, like that, or that wind chill. What is it called? I don't know. I just, whatever, that chill from the wind is much crazier than what it is here. You get like 40 degrees and that's freezing to most of it. Like that's like way too cold for most of us here because we're used to, 110, 115 weather where I'm at in the summertime. It is most of the time that there's not very many of those days where it's like 110, 115. I don't remember the last time it got up to 110. Now that I think about it, no, I can't remember I know that there was, 109 was the hottest that I've seen probably in the last 5 years. But 109, I'm dying. I'm not going outside in 110 degree or 109 degree weather unless I'm going straight to an air-conditioned vehicle and then straight into an air-conditioned place. Like, I'm not trying to be outside in that because I'm somebody, I sweat when I peel an orange when it's 50 degrees outside. Like, I'm just saying. So if it's 109 and I'm walking somewhere, oh my gosh, that is way too hot. Just saying. So I do have some plans for stuff coming up. You guys will be a part of that in some way as it comes. We'll see how it all works out. It's all that learning process. It's all of how I just got to figure out how to do it all. I'm excited for it though. So those are some future plans. We'll see how everything goes. We'll see how it's going to work out. Again, I'm excited for it. I'm excited for what's to come. We'll see how it goes, right? Let's do it. All right. So I'm going to, a little disclaimer today. This is, every episode has been me just kind of talking about my own experiences and my experiences with things. And this episode is no different than that. It's not going to be any different. I'm going to be talking about something that for a lot of people, I think we deal with. I think there's a lot of people that deal with this issue. I don't know how many, but I know that a lot of people, including myself, deal with this issue. So there's going to be a lot of personal anecdotes in this, and I'm going to tell you guys a lot of stories. That's what a personal anecdote is. It's like my own thing. Anyway, I'm being redundant. So today, the thing that I'm having a hard time talking about it because it's not something that I like to do. It's not something I like to talk about. I don't necessarily like to say that I'm dealing with certain issues. This week, I have been dealing with a fear of abandonment really hard. Now, this is something I've struggled with my entire life. This is something that has always been there, that those abandonment issues that I've dealt with for as long as I can remember. So since I was a kid, I've dealt with these abandonment issues and feeling like I'm just going to be abandoned by and these are things that I've said to, I've told people that I'm really just that person who I'm used until I'm no good anymore, and then I'm thrown out. I've actually said that to people, like, ooh, that's so, it gives me, I don't even know if I'm going to use this word in the right way. It gives me the ick. Like, it just thinking about myself saying that, like, ew, that's gross. I will say I did actually feel that way when I said it. However, did it need to be said? No. Now, thinking about this, that fear of abandonment, the abandonment issues, it really got me to thinking about what's the cause, like what caused these things. And I know that there are some people who might already know. You might not already know the answer. And then I started thinking about how do those abandonment issues show up in other people's lives? So I was like, I want to look into this and I want to research it just a bit more. So looking into it, I found out that it does show up in a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. Now, one way that it shows up for some people is insecurity or jealousy. Insecurity or jealousy, and I feel, or insecurity and jealousy would probably be the better way to put it. I don't necessarily deal with the jealous part of it because even though like it's definitely there, I kind of force it down. I'm like, get down in there. So I don't really deal with the jealousy part, but I definitely deal with that insecurity of like, am I actually good and am I actually worth someone's time? Another way that it shows up for a lot of people is that feeling of being empty or being lost. And I'll tell you what, like, I know for me, there's been a lot of time where I felt like I was empty, that I didn't have anything else. Now, is that part of that? I don't know, but I know that feeling lost, like I don't know where I'm going, feeling aimless, like a ship on the sea that lost its rudder. I've had that feeling many times in my life where I'm not sure where I'm going, just being completely aimless, and I didn't know how to get out of it for a long time. Another way that it shows up for a lot of people is relying heavily on others for support. This creates a very codependent relationship with people where all of my emotions are wrapped around how others feel about me and whether or not I will get that support from them. Some people will avoid all intimacy. There's a huge avoidance with intimacy. Now, sometimes that's just not trusting someone. And when I say that, that doesn't necessarily mean a sexual intimacy. That just means intimacy of letting someone else in enough to where you will actually, like, they get to know you. And I'll tell you, for me, the way that this shows up is the fact of I give a lot of myself out. I will be very open and honest with a lot of people. I tell people all the time, I'm an open book. However, there are times where when somebody asks me a question that's a little bit too personal, instead of telling them, I'm not actually going to answer that right now, I will change the subject. I will talk around the question. And most of the time people, either they don't notice or they notice but they let it go and they don't push more for it. And intimacy, I think, is actually something that is very big for most of us, and that it happens in every relationship that we have. There's a level of intimacy that we have with each person. There are some of my closest friends know me better than anyone else has because they've been with me through so much. They've seen me at some of my darkest, depressed states, but they've also seen me at some of my highest mountain peaks, and they've been with me through all of it, from the bottom to the top and everywhere in between. They've seen all of my emotional waves come and go, and they've been there for it, and they know a lot of the issues about me. So with those people, my level of intimacy is much higher. And one thing that has really sucked, and I'll be completely honest, and I don't necessarily want to be, with my ex-wife, there was a level of intimacy that I was uncomfortable. I didn't want to have conversations that were too hard because I felt at that time that those conversations would lead her to want to, but instead it actually went the other way because I wasn't willing so often to have those hard conversations, or I was afraid of them turning into something more and turning into an argument, which is something that I was very afraid of, even though we argue almost constantly. There was hardly a day that went by where we weren't arguing about something. Most of the time there were just things that she was trying to get across to me. This is an issue for me and I want to fix it. And there were a lot of times that she wanted to fix it before she had one foot out the door. But she definitely, things picked up as she had one foot out the door, and she was like, the other foot's being picked up and I'm already coming out. Like that was just it. So not to say that there weren't weren't problems on both sides, but this is me recognizing my part. There were a lot of other things that happened in that, and we might get into that over time, but we might not. These are things that there are a lot of those issues that I've actually fixed since then, that I'm actually like, I don't know why I didn't start working on this earlier. Some of it's because I just didn't have the tools. I didn't know how to do it. And then some of it was like a fear. There was a fear of fixing those things, but I digress. That's a huge bunny trail. But so that I tried to avoid intimacy and at a higher level with, because even though there were all the marital things that happened within that time, and I have 5 kids, 5 biological children, so there was definitely intimacy in that way. However, it didn't go into a deeper emotional intimacy, which I think is actually more important in a relationship, in a marriage. And when you're with someone that you want to be, it's more important for an emotional intimacy. Now, don't get me wrong, that other intimacy, that sexual intimacy is important, but I don't think it is as important as the emotional intimacy. But then you also have that other side where if you're not careful with it and you're not watching yourself with it, then it actually can turn into a codependency. A lot of C words: intimacy, codependency, so on and so forth. Another way that it shows up for people is being desperate for attention. Y'all, when I read that, when I saw that one, I almost punched my computer screen. I'm getting ready for this episode and I'm writing out my notes for this episode, and I almost punched the screen. I was like, are you kidding me? Desperate for attention. Hunt, here I am. Here's the Hanging with Jay podcast, desperate for attention, looking at my view counter every day. Has it gone up by 1? Do I have another subscriber on YouTube? Do I have another follower on Spotify? Desperate, struggling every day not to share the podcast on all of my social media platforms and just begging people, please watch this. Please, I just want your attention. I was like, how dare you, me, call me out like that? Oh my gosh. I was like, how dare you talk at all about being desperate for attention when I'm literally I'm getting this ready for my podcast that I want to get attention, because I do want the Hanging with Jay podcast to get attention, and I want it to gain traction, and I want to help people get through things. But then so all of those thoughts, I'm like, well, no, I want attention because of this. Like, you still are desperate for attention, my guy. Take several seats and chill. So just thinking about it, I wanted to punch my computer screen. And I'm going to get into just kind of some of the ways that I've shown a desperation for attention. One way that I've done that is I have tried to be not the funniest person in the room, but one of the funnier people in the rooms that I'm in, whatever room that might be. I try to be one of the funnier people. There are times where somebody will say something and I don't think about it, and I just say something else, and just to add to it, and it ends up being funny. And there have been times where I'm like, I don't even realize that it was what I said was funny. But that's very few and far between. I will be honest with you. I'm desperate for that attention much of the time. So that one definitely shows up for me as well. I think all of these have shown up for me in many different ways throughout my entire life. But this one has been one that becoming a theater kid, becoming somebody who just loved to be in front of people and perform. Like, that's huge. Like, I wanted that attention. I wanted some of those lead roles, but the problem that I had as well with that is I wanted a lead role, but as soon as I got a role that was a little bit more, there were so many times that I would almost self-sabotage. And I've done that in my life in general, that as soon as I get something that I want, I actually start to self-sabotage, because then I'm like, well, I don't feel like I deserve this. No matter how much work I've put into it, I don't feel like I deserve this success. Now, I've said it already this year that this is the year where I'm going to be successful. And I said that 2 episodes ago in episode 5. I want this year to be the year of success in my life. But I think even more than that, as I think into it and as I work out the plan on how that's going to work out for me and what it look like, I realized that I actually want it the year where I accept that I'm worthy of being sick, that if I put in the work, then I can be successful, and it's okay. It's okay for me to be sick. Desperate for attention is probably one of the top. Like, oh, reading that, I was like, how dare you? But one of the other ways that it shows up in a lot of people, including myself, is that fear of rejection. That fear of rejection has stopped me in many ways, in many areas of being successful. Just thinking about being alone, there were times where I wouldn't ask for a day off from work that I needed to have off because I was afraid that they would tell me no. So what did I do instead? There were times that I just called in, said, "Oh man, I'm so sick." I just lied. I don't like to lie. I'm not a fan, because then I have to keep track of my lies. I'd rather not. I would just rather tell the truth. So for a long time, if I wanted to do something, instead of being told no, I just wouldn't ask. I would go do it and then call in and lie. Like if I was working, I would call in and lie about it because I didn't want to be told no. I was afraid that I would be rejected in the thing that I wanted to do. There were times that I didn't ask for certain things from my ex-wife or from various women that I've dated over the years because I was afraid of being rejected and then afraid of pushing them away further. So I didn't ask because I was afraid of not only being rejected, but their entire opinion of me changing. Even it could be as simple as, hey, I want to start doing a podcast. Hey, I want to get a Lego set. But you're a 37-year-old man. Why would you want to get a Lego set? You're not a child. Because I enjoy just building things like that. Now, luckily for me with the Legos, I will say I do have children who love playing with Legos. So I get to play with Legos because I'm bonding with them. Boom, boom. Just saying. But there were a lot of times where I wanted to start a business, but I didn't want to talk to my ex-wife when I did still want to start a business. I was afraid of doing that. And the problem then became I would become hyper focused on it. So it would come out eventually that that's what I wanted to do. But then I was so focused on it that I wasn't focused on anything else. I was like, oh, hey, there was a business that I wanted to do a while ago. And at some point, if it works out, then I would love to be able to do that. And I'll tell you guys what that is. I would love to share it. I wanted to start a food truck and I wanted the food that we made to be hamburger because I love burgers and I do love to cook hamburgers. So I wanted to start a burger truck, and I was afraid to talk to her about this. I didn't really talk to anybody about it until finally I did talk to her about it, and she thought it was a great idea. But then that created something else where I became so hyper focused on it that I was like, oh, hey, this food truck is already ready to go. We just have to have $15,000 for it. We didn't even have the $100 to keep the lights on that month. And I'm talking about spending $15,000 to buy a food truck? Come on, my God. There's a lot of other steps that are between those two. So that in and of itself is it's an example. It might be a bad example, but it is an example. That fear of rejection, it's actually stopped me quite a few times from asking women, like talking to women that I was attracted to, just to ask them like, hey, you want to go get dinner sometime? You want to go get coffee? And I was so afraid of being rejected. And a lot of times I co-signed on my own BS by being like, well, they're probably not into big guys anyway. So instead of giving myself the opportunity and giving them the opportunity, I just wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't move forward. And now that's in my dating life. That's in those areas. So, but right now I'm focusing very hard on being single, and we'll get into why in just a little bit. Now, looking into abandonment issues, I actually found out that abandonment issues, that term that we use for it, obviously it came up with that list, but also as I looked into it, I was like, oh wait, abandonment issues isn't even like a mental disorder term or whatever, however we want to call it, like however we want to say that. It's just a part of a deeper problem. For many people, it's undealt with childhood trauma, or it could even be a sign of borderline bipolar disorder. So childhood trauma, like this is something that I think a lot of us have undealt with childhood trauma, things that just happen and we just kind of brush them under the rug because that's just the way it was. That was just what happened. Now, I'll tell you the three main ones for that are abuse or neglect, a family member or someone close to you dying, or unstable living conditions. I'll tell you, okay, so I told you there was going to be a lot of personal anecdotes. I get into a lot of things right now. They're always hard for me to talk about. It's hard for me to get into, but at the same time, I'm okay with sharing my story because it might resonate with someone else. So growing up, I'm going to tell you, like, get into a little bit of my story right now of, and maybe this is the things that I deal with, and why I have some of these issues and that childhood trauma. This isn't to trauma dump. This is to share my story. And if it resonates with you, then we can work together and get to that other side of this journey we call life. So when I was a kid, my dad, my biological father, when he was still a part of my life and in my life, he was very abusive. There were many times that I was put into the hospital. There was one time that he boxed my ears so many times that I constantly had to have I had hearing problems much of the time because how much he would do that to me. There was one time in particular that he took me and he drop kicked me down the hallway. He literally, I was about 18 months old, and he was mad at me because I kept going in front of the TV. Now I don't remember this. These are stories that my family has told me, that my mom has told me, and the medical records do back it up. There was a time that he got so mad at me that he picked me up and he dropped me and he kicked me down the hallway. There was a lot of traumatic things that happened in my body. I did have to have surgery because of it. Those were issues that I had, and growing up, I do remember a few times that of things like that happening, and I remember dealing with a lot of anger issues growing up. Going forward, he kind of fell out of our lives after my mom and him got a divorce when I was pretty young. I think I was like 2 or 3 when my mom said enough is enough, and she ended it. So there's definitely abuse and neglect in my past. There's that abuse part is definitely there. The neglect part came from the fact that much of the time my mom was working, my dad was trying to watch TV, not trying to spend time with his children. Um, a little bit later on, he decided that he was done living the way that he wanted, that he was living, and the way that he actually wanted to live was live a life that he could love his children. So he tried to start coming back into our lives. He got clean and sober, and he really spent the time to try to do that. Now, however, one thing that happened was, as I talked about in the last episode, if you've watched that, if not, or here's a refresher. So, my dad decided to get clean and sober, and then about a month, like not very long after that, it could have been a few weeks after that, the pain and everything that he had been covering up with drugs and alcohol was hitting him so hard that he's like, I have to go to the doctor. So he ended up going to the doctor and found out that he had um, a brain tumor or cancer that was too far gone. They could do things to alleviate and help bring things back. So he really and this is one reason why I call my dad my hero, because instead of going back to drugs and alcohol, he said, okay, I'm going to fight this as much as I possibly can. But even more than that, I'm going to try to actually instill in my children things that I want them to know and things that are a legacy that I want to pass on to them other than the abuse that I've given to them. So, ooh, so then moving forward about a year later, he passed away, and that hit me really hard because for the first time in 10 years, in the 10 years of my life, I finally had a dad who cared. I finally had a dad who loved me, who showed that to me, and then he died. Now, unfortunately, during this time, we lived about 1,000 miles away from him, so there was a lot of phone conversations that I remember having with him. There's a lot of times where I remember after we found out what was going on, and my sister and I didn't even know what was going on. We just knew you guys are getting on a plane and going to Oregon. So we had to get on a plane and go to Oregon, and that was a fun trip. Like, we thought it was awesome until we got there and we realized why we were there. And that was because that's when we found out that our dad was going to die very soon. Uh so during that time, unfortunately, my mother had moved on, and as I think it shows up in a lot of people's lives, when you move from abusive relationship, toxic relationship to a toxic relationship. And through that, or with that, my mother did almost exactly that. She moved from that relationship into a relationship with not my stepdad that I have now, but with another man. that he was a knight in shining armor. He was somebody who he had a silver tongue. He could sell ice to an Eskimo. He could sell ketchup popsicle to a person in white gloves. Like, he had a silver tongue, and he was very gifted in lying, of presenting himself in a way that was great. And then you got so close to him that there's no way to get away when he decided to show his true colors. And he proved that he was a very, very abusive man, to the point that he wasn't just physically abusive, he was so mentally abusive, it was insane. So, dealing with the fact that my dad is going to die, and then also dealing with the fact of every day when I got home from school, I was afraid that there was going to be an ambulance out front of our house because our stepdad finally killed our mom. Dealing with that every day as a 8, 9, 10-year-old, 11-year-old boy, constantly afraid of that. Living in fear that not only am I losing my dad, but this man is going to kill my mom. That's a heavy load, I feel, for anyone to bear. So then I dealt with that. Then I had to deal with my dad dying. And then once my mom was like, I'm done with this. I can't live this way anymore. I can't let my kids live this way anymore. There were some things that happened in our lives where she was able to get away from it. Now, unfortunately, in all of this time, from the time I was about 5 or 6 till the time I was 16, 17, we never had a stable home. There were many times that I remember that we had to sleep in our car. Luckily, I never had like, my mom never kicked me out of the house where I was never welcome back. She would kick me out of the house for like the day because she needed me out of her face, but she never kicked me out of the house, and I feel very blessed in that way. I feel very lucky because I know a lot of people that they do have that story. We have very similar stories, and on top of the things that I dealt with, they also get kicked out of their house and are never allowed to come back. So I feel blessed in the fact that I don't have to deal with that. Now, then so those 3 are huge causes of having those abandonment issues and those childhood traumas. So dealing with those things are things that they're not good for anyone. As I was growing up, it did lead to a lot of issues. I was a people pleaser with anger issues. That is not a good combination, y'all. It led me down a path that I didn't want to go down, that I've had years of repercussions from it. And it still comes up to this day, some of those things that happened. And it's not fun. It caused a lot of things to happen, and it caused a lot of hurt in my own life and other people's lives. And it's not something that I'm proud of to look at, but I know that it's part of my story. But even more than that, it's a part of my story in overcoming and moving on. And the beautiful part is that many people that were involved in that also got to move on, and we all got to be closer after those things. And there are times that it still crops up and it still creeps up, and those things are still there. For example, I only recently got out of a relationship, and those abandonment issues and that fear of rejection really came up pretty hard and heavy. Now, the good thing is that I did expect it to be ending, but I expected it to be ending. Why? Because I didn't feel like I was good enough. That was a pain that I've had to deal with a lot. And that's not an, oh, woe was me statement. That's not for me to get attention from you. I hope that I can connect with you more in my realness and being real. It was something that hurt. It's something that I had to deal with. And I had to deal with that fear of abandonment coming true. Now, some of it, yeah, it probably came true because of myself, and it was that self-fulfilling prophecy. So having to deal with that and then dealing with the pain and the fallout from that, not just for myself, but also now for my children. So dealing with those things was very hard, but there are things that we have to work to move past and move through. I know that there's a lot of people out there that probably wonder, like, well, I think I have abandonment issues, but I don't know. One sign of that, there's a few signs that could come up with that. And yes, I know that we said, like, what does it look like? And here's just another thing, like, it's another list of signs of abandonment issues. One way is that you have trouble communicating with others, and that's something that, yeah, I've had to deal with that. I've definitely had trouble communicating with others, things that getting my point across of things that I want, things that I need. I have trouble communicating with people. And there have been times that I've said, well, yeah, that's because I'm an introvert and I have trouble communicating these things. No, it's not. I have trouble communicating about random things. You seek out reassurance that someone won't leave you. There's another one for me. You might constantly try to get attention from your partner. Now, attention from your partner, like, I know that that's something that, well, yeah, you want attention from your partner. It's your partner. But when you're constantly seeking it out, they're on their phone and you're like, why are you on your phone right now? I need attention. Why are you not paying attention to me? They're on their phone for a little bit. Like, you guys aren't talking. They look at their phone and they play a game on it. It's okay. You might find out that you can't fully trust your partner. And when I say you can't, you're unable to. You're unable to trust your partner with a lot of things, not just, is this person cheating on me, but trusting them enough to say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Now, there are times that I know that in my own life, I don't trust the person I'm with because they've proven they aren't trustworthy. And if they're not trustworthy, why are you still with them? And one of the last ways that I'm going to talk about, and this kind of gets into the fact of why I'm staying single right now and why I'm choosing to be single and not go out and look for a relationship, is you quickly jump from one relationship to another. This is something you do. I know it's something that I do, something that I did for a long time. When I was really young, there were a lot of times that I would literally look for another relationship because I knew that the last relationship was going to be ending. Whether it was because I was ending it or they were ending it, I would look for another relationship and I'd have that next one in the back pocket and then immediately jump into the next one. After my divorce, even though I really worked towards not getting into another relationship right away, within a year, I was on dating sites. And there were a lot of times that there were a few different women that I had talked to in that time frame, even within that year, of trying to get attention from them and seeing maybe I could get into a relationship with this person. So I was so then I was on those dating websites within a year. And then immediately after getting out of a relationship, I've had 3 relationships since my divorce 5 years ago, ranging anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. I have nothing bad to say about any one of those women that I had spent time with and that I had gotten close with. Nothing bad to say about them. The relationships didn't work out. But after each one was over, it was very soon after, within months, usually within 30 days, that I started looking again for the next relationship to get into. Now that I'm single, I'm trying to just be single and be happy with myself, finding myself again and being happy with that. If a relationship comes, it comes. Awesome. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Awesome. Cool. I know my worth. I know what I have to give. However, I need to learn what I have to give to myself. I have to learn what I have. I don't have to learn it again. I have to learn it. I have to learn. I tell people, I end each podcast with, don't dare forget that you're worth it. Because I don't want you to forget that you're worth it, because for so long I didn't. I held on to this thought that I'm not worth people's attention. And as I said earlier, I held on to this thought process that is disgusting, that I'm not worth it, but I want other people to know that they are. And I know now that I am. That's why I end each episode like that, because I finally realize that I'm worth it, and I'm worth the time. So I hope that you can as well. If you struggle with that at all, know that you are worth it. If you have a partner that you know they struggle with this, you have to work on not being codependent with them or allowing them to be codependent on you. But I would say reassure them that they are worth it, and they're worth your time, and that you're not going anywhere. But also know that that's their problem to deal with. Those issues are their problems, just like your issues are your issues. You have to deal with them, not them, you. It's not up to somebody else to fix the problems that have happened in your life. Now, some of those problems, some of those issues, being abused, not your fault. Being neglected, not your fault. Not having a stable home growing up, not your fault. A family member dying, most of the time, not your fault. But that doesn't make you a victim either. Don't get into that victim mentality here. Don't allow yourself to get to that place. Well, I'm just a victim. I'm a victim of circumstance. No, chill. Because now, taking those steps now to fix that is huge. Now, speaking about steps, how can you cope with, or how can you overcome the issues that you have with that childhood trauma or that bipolar disorder? Bipolar disorder is a little bit different. And again, I don't have letters backing up my name. However, there are people out there that have letters after their names that can help you. Therapy is a huge tool in order to cope with abandonment issues or childhood trauma, bipolar disorder, BPD. Those are just two examples of what could cause those abandonment issues or fear of abandonment to crop up. Now, going to therapy is something that is huge. Reaching out to, if you're like, I can't afford therapy, there are services out there that help. I know that there are apps out there that do help and that offer a lot of different plans. I would say figure out a way to get that. If you can't even do that, I would say find someone that you can trust and that you can start talking to, and that you can start getting some of these issues out. Therapy that's out there. It's top of the list. Finding a friend that you can start going to. Something that's worked for me, and before I could start affording therapy and all, is being introspective is huge. Starting to journal. The internet is a huge guide, and it can help a lot. Now, I do say, again, therapy is top. That's the top one to go to. That's the one that you should be trying for and shooting for. But in lieu of those things, making sure that you are being introspective always, journaling as much as possible, and staying in gratitude. Looking up some of these things and realizing when you are showing signs, when you are jealous of a partner and there is no evidence showing that they have been untrustworthy. Work on not being jealous, pushing that down. These are just some thoughts that I'm having on it. You guys, I Thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out. I know that just had a lot of heavy content in it, y'all. But if you made it this far, thank you guys so much. You guys are absolutely amazing. If you're having trouble, seek the help to fix it. Here's one. This could be step one. It's just watching this episode. I don't have a lot of tools and tips of how to get past it because I'll be honest with you, I'm working past it myself. I'm working through it, and you guys are with me for that journey because we're going to be successful. That's all I've got for this week. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Y'all, life is a journey, so keep taking the steps to move forward. Don't you dare forget, you're worth it. I'll see y'all in episode 8.